Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzhak Rubin speaking to you from south of Jerusalem here in the holy, peaceful land of Israel. Today is the 17th day of the month of Tammuz, 5784. It's July 23rd, 2024. This coming Shabbat we read Parashat Pinhas, the third to last Parasha of the book of Numbers. Begins chapter 25, verse 10, concludes chapter 30, verse 1. It's the penultimate, I think that's a real word, the penultimate Torah reading of the book of Numbers. And it's a big one. It's packed with a lot. And we're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes. But as if you noticed the date when I mentioned it, it is the 17th of Tammuz, Shva Esrei B'Tammuz. It is a fast day today. And if my voice sounds a little different, which it might, is because I am fasting. It is mid-afternoon right now. It's actually around practically 4:30, and I've been fasting all day. Today is a dawn to dark fast. So here in Israel, the fast began really at around 4 a.m., and it concludes a little bit after 8 p.m. tonight. So I've been fasting all day, and nevertheless, the show must go on, and we are right now beginning Temple Talk. So, of course, as you know, Shva Esrei B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, is one of the 4 fast days mentioned by the prophet Zechariah in the book of the same name, Zechariah. And let's just have a look at it. It appears in Chapter 8, verse 19, so said Hashem of hosts, the fast of the 4th. And each of these 4 numbers mentioned are referring to months. So it's the fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th month, the fast of the 7th month, and the fast of the 10th month shall be for the house of Yehudah, for joy and happiness, and for happy holidays, but love, truth, and peace. So he is referring to the 4 fast days that we continue to observe today. They are the fast of Gedalia, which is the fast which takes place immediately after Rosh Hashanah, commemorating the assassination of Gedalia, who was the governor who was put in charge of Jerusalem, and the very small area around it at the time of Israel's return from Babylon. And that's the fast of the 7th month, and the fast of the 10th month is the 10th of the month of Tevet, and the fast of the 4th month is, of course, today. This is the 4th month. Tammuz is the 4th month, and the fast of the 5th month is, of course, the fast of Av. And Zechariah, of course, prophesizes that in the future there will be holidays once the Holy Temple is built. Now, since the time of Zechariah, when the Holy Temple was being rebuilt, and perhaps he was anticipating that those fast days would become holidays very quickly, and in fact, they weren't commemorating the fast days of these fast days during the Second Temple period. Because the temple had been rebuilt, but we inaugurated them, so to speak, after the destruction of the Second Temple. And of course, in the time of Zechariah, the fast of the 4th, which would be this month, Tammuz, as we mentioned a week ago, was probably observed on the 9th of the month, because that was the day that the walls were breached in the time of when the Babylonians laid siege on Jerusalem. During the Roman conquest, the walls were breached on the 17th, and so the fast was moved over to the 17th, and we are observing them to this day. And again, as soon as we build a holy temple, may it be soon, these days will become festival days. And what wonderful festival days they will be, because we'll be celebrating them in the Holy Temple. And of course, the 17th of Tammuz kicks off the 3 weeks Bein HaMetzurim, we refer to them in Hebrew, between the straits, S-T-R-A-I-T-S, narrow places, from a verse, one of the first verses in the book of Echa, Lamentations, written by the prophet Jeremiah, describing the physical and the spiritual and emotional situation, the mood following the destruction of Jerusalem and the Holy Temple by the Babylonians. We read that, of course, on the fast of Tisha B'Av in 3 weeks. But this 3-week period, which we're just beginning today, are 3 weeks of mourning and remembrance and reflection concerning the destruction of the holy temples. And so there are certain customs that are associated with mourning a person, a loved one, that are observed in various ways throughout these 3 weeks. And as the 3 weeks progress from the next week and a half, which is the final week and a half of Tammuz, to the month of Av, and then the 9th of Av, they slowly become more intense in their observation. Different kehilot, different edot, different communities have different customs, but we're all on the same page in terms of mourning and reflecting. And again, for 2,000 years, during the galut, during the exile, the emphasis, of course, was on mourning, because Israel was exiled from its land, hadn't returned yet. The idea of rebuilding the Holy Temple was still very distant, because we weren't even in the land of Israel, let alone in Jerusalem, let alone having any kind of sovereignty, any kind of ability to even think about rebuilding the Holy Temple. And so, of course, the emphasis was 100% on the mourning, since we have returned to the land of Israel. And the prophecies are coming true. The prophecies of all the Hebrew prophets of old are coming true. And since we have returned to Jerusalem and have reunited Jerusalem and have sovereignty in the land and in Jerusalem, and since we have access to and are praying on the Temple Mount, even though, as you know, it's limited and problematic, and we still have a big fight ahead of us, we are at the stage where simply mourning is, not only is it not enough, but it's irresponsible. Because, you mourn somebody that you've lost, they're not coming back. Not until Tehillat HaMeitim, not until the resurrection of the dead. They're not coming back. And so we mourn very seriously, very painfully. But we're in a position now where the temple awaits us. So if we're simply mourning and not thinking about what we could be doing or should be doing or must be doing in order to advance the building of the Holy Temple, then we're skirting the situation, we're evading our responsibility, and we're doing a disservice to ourselves, to the temple, to the prophets who prophesied that we would rebuild the temple, and of course to Hashem, who said, "Vasuli Mikdash," and will make for me a sanctuary, a temple, and I will dwell amongst you. That commandment is every bit as much today important, right in front of us, and necessary and obligatory as it was when Hashem first said it to Israel in the wilderness. So, yes, we are not simply mourning the Holy Temple, the destruction of the Holy Temple. And I say it, it's a period of reflection, but we're not simply reflecting. A lot of people say, okay, this is a chance to do tshuva. This is a chance to, we have to be better people, because the temple can't possibly be rebuilt until we have reached a situation of what we call in Hebrew ahavat chinam, which kind of translates as free love, but what it means is loving unconditional love, I would say, of one another. Because the second temple was in a great part destroyed because we were so divided and at each other's throats, something which we witnessed a year ago here in Israel, which led to the Chorban, really. Chorban meaning destruction of the towns and farms outside of Gaza, and the death of well over 1,000 people, and the abduction of hundreds of people. That's how detrimental, that's how destructive machloket, division within our nation is. If it's a division that's not l'shem shamayim, if it's not in the name of heaven, meaning if it is a argument that we can solve, that should be solved, and not simply something that we are arguing in order to. There are certain arguments amongst our sages that are arguments that are bringing us closer to Hashem. But petty arguments like the ones that Israel was experiencing last year are arguments that just distance us from one another and distance us from Hashem, and we paid a heavy price for that. So we really need to be focusing, not simply, yes, certainly, absolutely, on unconditional love for one another and, unity. That's been the call of this battle against all our enemies this past 9 months. And but not only unity, we need to be forging ahead. And I believe very strongly that when we are mitasek, when we are involved with and busy with and focused on rebuilding the Holy Temple, that brings us together, that unites us, just as it did, we read in the book of Exodus, when Israel was building the tabernacle. There were no arguments, there were no wars, there was no ego involved. People worked together, and people gave of themselves freely and completely in order to make this house for Hashem. That's the real elixir which brings us together. So I believe if we all would focus, yes, on winning this war, but why do we need to win this war? Of course we need to win this war in order to keep our people safe, to keep our children safe, to keep our towns safe, to keep our land safe. But why are we here in this land? Of course we're here to settle it and to live a Torah lifestyle and bring a Torah-based society into the land. But why do we need to do all that? Because we need to build a house for Hashem. So the temple, the holy temple, the Mikdash, is really the ultimate cause for us being here, and it's the ultimate uniter. And so yes, these 3 weeks, as every day, every week of the year, we need to be focused on building the holy temple and doing everything in order to get there. But especially these 3 weeks when Jews around the world are more focused on the temple, and especially during the 9 days of Av, and especially on the 9th of Av, when hearts and thoughts are totally focused on the destruction of the Holy Temple. We need to be focused on the rebuilding of the Holy Temple. And it is so important. It really is what is needed to finally bring peace into the land and to end all the hatred, the baseless hatred aimed at Israel, and all the violence aimed at Israel, because once we have reestablished the house of prayer for all nations, then all nations will come together in order to worship and to bask in the light of Hashem in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. So, that is my speech about the Holy Temple and about unity and about purpose here on the 17th day of Tammuz, a fast day. And let us now turn our attention to our current Torah reading, Parashat Pinhas. And Pinchas, of course, picks up right where last week's Parashat Balak left off. And let's just recap. After Bilam went home, after totally frustrating Balak, because instead of cursing Israel, he praised Israel to the heavens. And in fact, his final words of praise were words of prophecy, prophesizing deep into the future, a day when Israel would overcome its enemies. And when we read the newspaper today, and read the newspaper, that's kind of a funny expression already. It gives away my age, I guess. When we read online what's happening in the world today, it's eerily reminiscent of some of the things that Bilam, who himself is an eerily reminiscent type of character, some of the things that he said concerning the end of days, because we are really in the beginning, at the very least, the beginning of the end of days here in this time, in our kufa, in our era, in our generation. So, as Bilam left, after he left, the Israelites, the men, began dating the Midianite women, the young girls. And it was basically a plot. It was basically a conspiracy. You have conspiracy theories. Here's a real one. They conspired to seduce the Israelite men and then get them to worship their gods. And of course, because they knew that was the worst thing that Israel could do, and that would weaken their connection with Hashem, and then Israel become vulnerable. And tradition tells us that Bilam, after failing to curse Israel because he could only speak the words that Hashem put in his mouth, then shared with Balak, the king of Moab, this idea, this plan, how they could weaken Israel and then be able to attack Israel. And so, yes, the Israelite men were having dalliances, is that the word, with the Midianite women, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And in fact, it seems that the if not the entire, the vast majority of the young men of the tribe of Simon, were cohort, or could I can't think of the word I want, were whatever, together with the Midianite women. And in fact, the climax comes when the prince of the leader, the Nasi, the president of the tribe of Shimon, brings his Midianite woman right before the tabernacle. And let's just read those last few verses from last week. Israel, on chapter 25, verse 1, book of Numbers, Israel settled in the Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry with the daughters of Moab. They invited the people to the feasts of their gods. The people ate and prostrated themselves to their gods. Israel became attached to Baal Peor, and the wrath of Hashem flared up against Israel. Hashem said to Moshe, "Take all the leaders of the people, hang them before Hashem against the sun, and the flaring wrath of Hashem will withdraw from Israel." Moshe said to the judges of Israel, "Let each man kill his men who were attached to Baal Peor." Behold, a man of the children of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman near to his brothers in the sight of Moshe and in the sight of the entire assembly of the children of Israel, and they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Pinchas, son of Elazar, son of Aaron the Kohen, saw, and he stood up from amid the assembly and took a spear in his hand. He followed the Israelite man into the tent and pierced them both, the Israelite man and the woman, into her stomach, and the plague was halted from upon the children of Israel. Those who died in the plague were 24,000. That was the conclusion of last week's Parsha. Now, understand, Israel is encamped on the eastern edge of the Jordan River, practically in the land of Israel. This is all the younger generation now. The older generation that left Egypt have all died out. This is the younger generation. These are the people going into Egypt. They're so close to entering into Canaan and conquering Canaan. How could they go so astray? How could they be so close and now fall so far? It's hard to understand, but as we know, it happens. It happens repeatedly, I think, in general, but certainly in Israelite, in Jewish history, it happens repeatedly, and it's happened here in Israel, modern Israel. We have made tremendous steps forward, and then we fall back. Human nature, I guess. But in any case, that's how last week's Parsha closes, and this week's Parsha begins. I'm going to be reading chapter 25, verse 10 in Hebrew, then in English. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen, Heshiv et Hamati me'al bnei Yisrael bekan'o et kin'ati betocham, velo hiliti et bnei Yisrael bekin'ati, lachen emor hineni noten lo et briti shalom, vayata lo urzaro acharav brit kuhunat olam tachat asher kine lelohav v'yechaper al bnei Yisrael v'shem ish Yisrael amukeh asher huka et Midianit Zimri ben Salu nasi beit av lashimoni v'shem ha'isha hamuka hamidianit Kozbi batzur rosh umut beit av b'Midian hu. Okay. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Pinchas, son of Elazar, son of Aaron the Kohen, turn back my wrath from among the children of Israel, when he zealously avenged my vengeance among them. So I did not consume the children of Israel in my vengeance. Therefore say, Behold, I give him my covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his offspring after him a covenant of eternal priesthood, because he took vengeance for his God, and he atoned for the children of Israel. The name of the slain Israelite man who was slain with the Midianite woman was Zimri, son of Salu, leader of a father's house of the Shimonim, the tribe of Shimon. And the name of the slain Midianite woman was Kozbi, daughter of Tsur, who was head of the people of a father's house in Midian. So this was royalty, practically royalty. And they were the leaders of this horrible happening. And of course, Kozbi was in on it. She had her instructions. We are going to seduce and trip up the children of Israel. But the Zimri, the head of the son of a father's house of the Simonites, he was bad. He did bad. He did real bad, and they got what was coming to them. And this is incredible act that Pinchas did. It's a very serious act. Our sages try to understand this. First of all, Pinchas, you may say, isn't it funny? He's the grandson of Aaron, so why does he get the covenant of eternal priesthood only now? Wasn't he a priest anyway? Well, when Hashem first said Aaron and his sons will get the priesthood. What do I want to say? I want to say that Pinchas was not yet born. Is that how it goes? So the sons, he wasn't included. He would not have been included as the sons of Aaron. You know what? I know that I'm not explaining this properly right now. I don't want to take the time right now to figure it out, but I will post on Facebook a proper explanation. So if you're shaking your head and wagging your finger at me right now because I'm unprepared, I apologize. But if you follow us on Facebook, you will get the proper explanation of why he was not originally included as inheriting the kuhuna, the priesthood. But now he will, and he has this great covenant of peace as well, covenant of peace, Brit Shalom. Then Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Harass the Midianites and smite them, for they harassed you through their conspiracy that they conspired against you in the matter of Peor, and in the matter of Kozbi, the daughter of the Midianite, their sister, who was slain on the day of the plague in the matter of Peor. And so it's put off. We read about other things now, but in next week's Parsha, we will be reading of the battle against Moab, and the utter destruction of the Midianites. And but the Parsha moves on. It covers a lot. It's a long Parsha, and it's, like I said, it's the next third to the last Parsha of the book of Numbers, but we really see that Israel's time in the wilderness is drawing quickly to a conclusion, to a close. Right after this story about Pinchas, our Parsha will go into a census, once again a census of the number of the children of Israel. And that census precedes the instructions that Moshe receives from Hashem as to dividing the land, the parcels of land, the inheritances that the different tribes will get according to the number of the people in each tribe, their population. Tribes with larger population will get larger plots of land. Smaller numbers will get smaller pieces of land. The actual location of the land will be determined by a gorah, by a hagrala, by a raffle, as it were. And so those preparations are made. Following that, the Benot Tzelofchad, the 5 daughters of Tzelofchad, who Tzelofchad was a man of the tribe of Menashe. The daughters of Tzelofchad, I'm reading chapter 21, verse 1, son of Hefer, son of Gilad, son of Machir, son of Menashe, of the families of Menashe, son of Yosef, drew near. And these are the names of his daughters: Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they approached Moshe and Elazar Kohen and the leaders of the entire assembly at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they said, "Our father died, and he has no sons. And according to the laws of inheritance, his son's supposed to get the inheritance, not his daughters, but we have no brother. So we don't want to lose the inheritance of our father. We want to be able to inherit the land that would have gone to our brother had we had a brother." And Moshe has no answer for them, so he immediately brings their claim before Hashem. And Hashem says famously in verse 6, Hashem said to Moshe, saying, "The daughters of Tzelofchad speak properly. You shall surely give them a possession of inheritance among the brothers of their father. And you shall cause the inheritance of their father to pass over to them." And so a whole new set of commandments, mitzvot, halachot, come into being because of these righteous sisters, these 5 sisters, 5 daughters of Tzelofchad, who said, "Wait a minute, we want this land." And of course they are celebrated to this day for being Zionists, because they loved the land of Israel, and they were anxious to be able to settle in the land of Israel, and it meant a lot to them, and they did not want to lose their inheritance. And they were celebrated for being strong, and for 5 young women to stand in front of the entire assembly. Moshe Rabbeinu stand in front of Moshe, stand in front of Elazar the Kohen, and stand in front of the tent of meeting, and to very eloquently lay out their claim. Took extraordinary courage, extraordinary intelligence, and extraordinary conviction, and of course extraordinary love of the land of Israel. And they were recognized in all those ways by Hashem. So yes, they are they're heroes, all 5 of them, and they should be regarded as such. This is the second time that their names are mentioned. Every time they're brought up, their names are mentioned. Earlier in the Parsha, when they were reading about the census, their names are brought up. And again, in a later reading later in the book of Numbers, they will be brought up again. So, and this is an instance of, you might say, the oral law in a way, because their inquiry, their case inspired Hashem to add to the Torah. It's a very fascinating. There are a few instances, for example, when the men who are impure came to Moshe and said, "We can't bring the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering, because we're impure," and Moshe had to inquire of Hashem what to do. We have a covenant with Hashem, and it is a partnership. It's a relationship. It's not simply Hashem says and we do. Yes, there is that aspect. All that Hashem says we will do, we said at Sinai. But we also can inquire, and we also can challenge. And again, these two challenges that we're talking about were not attempts to do less, but actually to do more, to be able to follow properly Hashem's commandments. And in order to do that, we needed more clarification. So this is a perfect example of, to this day, Israel's relationship with Hashem. We are both active partners, and it's incumbent upon us to always be inquiring and always being wanting to know how we can better fulfill Hashem's will, and how we can better move forward. And of course, as we're speaking before of building the Holy Temple, this is one of the things that we at the Temple Institute are always involved in, studying and trying to understand how we can move things forward in our own limited way as an organization dedicated to rebuilding the Holy Temple. And so, yes, we as an organization are always in constant dialogue, as it were, with Hashem and with the Torah, because we are constantly wanting to glean more and understand more. And the only way to get there, the only way to move forward, and the only way to get to the building of the Holy Temple is to be constantly involved in it and working on it and discovering and recovering and uncovering things that may have been known 2,000 years ago, but have been forgotten along the 2,000 years of exile. And so it's constant effort, it's constant work, and it's constant reward. And our big reward, of course, was when we rebuild the Holy Temple and we are back to where we need to be, back to where we belong in our entirety. So, getting back to our parsha, after the daughters of Tzelofchad get the answer that they were looking for, Hashem says to Moshe, you need to go up to Mount Arava, I believe that's the name of the mount, and look at the land. I'm going to give you a look at the land that you're not going into. And no, Mount Avarim is the mount that Hashem told Moshe to ascend to and to look into the land. And again, he says, you're not going in because of you rebelled against my word in the wilderness of sin, in the assembly strife, to sanctify me at the water before their eyes. These are the waters of strife at Kadesh in the wilderness of sin. And then Moshe says to Hashem, listen, I accept my fate, but what about the children of Israel? They need a leader. They need someone who will lead them into the land. And Hashem, without hesitation, says, Yoshua will take over. You shall lay your hands upon him in order to anoint him, as it were, before the assembly, so they understand that you are giving over the command to Yoshua. And they do that. And immediately following that, the parsha goes into a very, very detailed description of all the holidays and all the offerings to be made during the holidays. And that, again, seems to come here as a reaffirmation to the children of Israel that you're going to be in the land soon. This is what you have to look forward to. These are the things you're going to need to do. It's going to be great. And just don't do foolish things. Stick with the program. Be strong. Don't fear. Stick with the program. Our program right now, here the music is about to end, but people, stick with the program. We're getting closer and closer every day. Be strong. Thanks for being with me. Temple Talk.